What is going on YouTube Austin? Zay back here with another YouTube video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about a stimulus check update. I've got a new proposal that I actually want to talk to you about and dive into a little bit during today's video, okay? And we've made a bunch of videos over the last several weeks talking about the different stimulus check updates and overall just what you can expect in this time, okay? All the way from the $1,200 stimulus to the $2,000 a month proposed stimulus to the Free Rent and Mortgage Cancellation Act, and pretty much everything, all the way from the EIDL loan, the PPP loan, which are a part of the SBA loan program for small businesses. But today, there's actually a new proposal that, in all honesty, it looks like it has some weight behind it. And I'm excited to dive into that in today's video. So if you haven't already, I would really appreciate it if you would smash that like button, as it really does actually help me out with the YouTube algorithm. And let's go ahead and dive into it. So the new proposed bill is actually called the Emergency Rental Assistance and Rental Market Stabilization Act, okay? And we're gonna dive into what this is and why this is actually different than the Free Rent and Mortgage Cancellation Act, which maybe you're familiar with. If you've been watching my videos, I know there's probably several other people on YouTube also talking about the Free Rent and Mortgage Cancellation Act. This is actually a different bill entirely, and we're gonna dive into it. And we're gonna actually pull it up on the screen and we're gonna look at it. So definitely make sure you stay tuned to the end of the video. And let's go ahead and jump in. So with the Free Rent and Mortgage Cancellation Act, which was another bill that was proposed, it was only gonna be up to a year. The bill that we're gonna talk about today can actually be up to 2 years if obviously it were to pass in its current format. So basically it was proposed by representatives, and it actually has 70 co-sponsors, which is pretty crazy. They're saying, the people that proposed the bill and all the co-sponsors, that the $1,200 stimulus check in the CARES Act, in the initial CARES Act round one, it was just not enough money for a lot of the lower income renters in the United States, okay? So essentially, this act would give $100 billion to provide housing for up to 2 years. Payments would actually be made directly to the property owner or the housing provider on behalf of the tenant or the renter, which is very interesting. And the bill actually directs the Department of Housing and Urban Development to oversee the distribution of the $100 billion to low-income renter households. According to the NLIHC, those people spend more than half of their income on housing costs, and that's something I want to come back to here in just a minute as we kind of dive into this and why these lower-income renters spend so much money on housing costs. And is that because of the global pandemic that we're in, or was that already the case before we wound up in the position that we're in? Let's just dive into the numbers really quick. The bill states that rent assistance be capped at 120% of fair market rent. Some 40% of the allocated money should be used for households whose income is only a third of the median income for their area. Households with income that equal half of the median income will receive no less than 70% of the funds, while the remaining dollars go to the households earning up to 80% of the area median income. 2% of the funds would benefit Native American tribes and Native Hawaiians, and 25% of the money each community receives can be utilized to cover relocation expenses incurred after March 27th, such as security deposits, application fees, and utilities. So let's back up a little bit here and look at the actual statistics before the kind of global pandemic that we're in. And that is that nearly 10% of low and very low income renter households were severely housing cost burdened before the start of the global shutdown. Again, I talked about a minute ago how over 50% of their income is actually applied towards housing costs, which is pretty crazy. And that statistic is really interesting. And the reason why, they did a couple of studies, and I'm just going to quote and actually read from the proposal or the bill and actually just literally quote the exact statistics of the NLIHC's. But basically, a shortage of affordable and available homes is about 7 million affordable and available homes for extremely low income renters. What that actually means is there's about 4 available affordable housing options, okay, for every 10 low-income renters. So essentially, what it boils down to is this. There's actually not enough housing that meets the criteria that is cheap enough for the lower income individuals in this country. And again, that was before everything that is going on right now. So when you look at it, the reason that these people have to spend so much money on housing is because basically they don't have any other option, right? There is no other option. And when that happens, basically you've got a bunch of people that are overpaying because they have no other option, and then they get on the rat race, right? The Ferris wheel, the hamster wheel, you might call it, and they can't ever get out of it because every time they have a dollar come in, they have a dollar go out, and they're never actually able to develop the emergency fund. They're never able to develop an investing strategy, right? They can't actually ever do anything because they're consistently having to spend so much money on housing. And as you know, unemployment's been on the rise, pretty crazy, really. Nearly 3.3 million new filings, actually. And reports actually show that 37% of extremely low-income renter households, over 4 million households essentially across the country, are the working age and in the labor force. So meaning, basically, of those households, 43% work 40 hours a week or more, and another 34% work at least 20 hours per week. Now, this is really interesting. So when we look at the data here, a lot of these lower income individuals actually work a lot of the jobs that got shut down. So the majority of the workforce that fits into the criteria of these low income renters, roughly 13% or more, basically 570,000 of them work retail jobs. About 580,000 of them work in restaurants or bars. So you've got a million people right there, 1.1 million people, and 260,000 in personal care positions. You got 1.3 or 1.4 million people that work jobs that basically were wiped out in the beginning of the shutdown, right? The moment everything shut down, restaurants shut, retail shut, all of that essentially shut. And these were people that already were spending 50% or more on housing. So what the NLIHC is actually proposing here in a nutshell is that, look, these people can't afford to pay rent. End of conversation, right? And if you don't get the economy back open, then you've got to help people out with rent. You can't just expect people to pay rent when they're out of a job for no reason of their own, just not let people go back to work, right? You've got to do something is essentially the idea of the proposal when I'm looking at it, right? So we're going to jump into it and talk a little bit more about this. You probably already know, but when they recently passed the CARES Act, the $2.2 trillion CARES Act that your $1,200 stimulus check came from, if you ended up getting the $1,200 stimulus check, about $4 billion of that went towards Emergency Solutions Grant, ESG, to basically support homeless shelters. About $5 billion for community development block grants, $1.25 billion for housing choice vouchers, about $1 billion for project-based rental assistance, and $685 million for public housing. In a nutshell, when you look at those numbers, it is not enough money actually got delegated from that initial CARES Act, according to this proposal, right? According to this bill, in order to actually help these low-income renters. So this bill is designed to say, hey, we need anywhere from 75 to 100 billion, and they ran a couple of different variations of the kind of what it would look and feel like, but anywhere from 75 to 100 billion needs to actually go to lower income individuals to help with rent, right? And this, again, would last up to 2 years. And the majority of this money would go, there's about 9,974,000 people that fit the criteria of the low-income individuals, right? And the majority of that money would actually go to them, okay? Again, according to this proposal. So looking at, a little bit more here into the proposal, basically the money, again, like I said, about 10 million people. So they define this as, and I'll see it right here, limited emergency rental assistance for only current and projected extremely low income renters with severe cost burdens would cost about $57 billion. Then they conducted a similar analysis I was talking about a minute ago for a far more robust program. Again, I'm reading word for word literally here, in which the current projected cost burden for these low income or very low income households would qualify for assistance for up to 12 months, and that would be 99.5 billion. So depending on what projection you're looking at here, again, like I said, anywhere from about 50 or 60 billion to 100 billion would actually go to these low or extremely low income renters across the country, essentially. So again, when we're doing the math and when we're actually looking at this, and I'll summarize it all up for you. In a nutshell, they're just saying, look, the $1,200 of initial stimulus money was not enough money. And even the unemployment, if these people got laid off, even if they were able to get the $600 additional unemployment, which I don't believe a lot of people are actually even getting, okay? Then they're based on, again, the projections, and I'm not going to read it all to you. I'll let you kind of look into this. I'll link everything in the description down below. But it's, again, what they're saying is it is not enough money for these very low income renters to actually pay their rent and survive. So that in a nutshell is this proposal, okay, is this bill that, we could see actually make it to the Senate. I mean, we just don't know, right? We've seen a lot of proposals. We've seen a lot of bills. There's just stuff everywhere, right? And I'm not a politician. The last thing I do is really get into politics. What I am here to do is talk about financials, okay? This is all very interesting to me, right? And I do believe that, again, like we were talking about earlier, one or the other needs to happen. Either the economy needs to reopen, people need to go back to work. Now, I'm not saying you've got to open big venues and have big concerts or football games, but, people need to return to their job. People need to be able to make money, or you've got to support them. And, if we're just going to look at the national debt and we're going to say, hey, we can't afford to just keep printing money right over and over and over again, because of inflation and all these different things, right? Then ultimately what we need to do is just get people back to work. So that's kind of what I'm seeing, and I think a lot of people are seeing the same thing, right? Where we don't know if there will be another bill or if we'll just see the economy start to open back up again. And I would like to know what your thoughts are, by the way. If you wouldn't mind dropping in the comment section below, letting me know what your thoughts are. I think it would be really interesting to hear. And again, if you haven't already, smash the like button. And normally on my channel, I do talk about simple real estate investing strategies, simple stock investing strategies, simple personal finance strategies, okay, how to save money, how to invest money, and multiple other things as it relates to that. So I would really appreciate it if you'd stay tuned. Even when I'm not making stimulus videos, it would mean a lot to me. And until then, I look forward to seeing you in the next video.